Hello, my name is Tim Wilmot and welcome to my watercolour demo of an English street scene, and this time a little bit different. It's going to be Contre Jour, against the light, and also this time I'm going to be using just three colours only, a yellow, blue and red, so a good exercise in mixing colours and working with a limited palette. Also in this watercolour, I'll be covering a few watercolour techniques like laying down a wash, wet in wet, splattering techniques, blending colours, negative painting, as in painting around the figures in cars, some dry brush strokes along the road there. And I'll also be going through the normal stages I go through in a painting and covering such things as timing. Now, those of you who've seen my previous demos will know I paint in a loose style or impressionistic style. And specifically, this is what I want to try and cover here in this video is, well, first of all, planning my picture. I might spend a few minutes just thinking it through in my head, imagining I'm painting and almost visualizing the finished painting. And me going through without doing any painting, just me going through in my mind, just going through the steps. And I try to think about, when I look at this picture, try to think, is it suitable for watercolor? Because I take many photographs, and I would say 90% of them aren't very suitable or pretty tricky for adapting to a watercolor, but this one should work because it's got negative shape, negative areas. We've got light and dark. We've got high contrast areas, so it should work well. And from a composition point of view, we've got our eye is being led into the picture with the we've got on the left hand side, we've got a nice frame with the left hand side of the buildings and that nice canopy above the shop catching the light on the top of it. We've got a figure there. Going back to the buildings, the left hand buildings, we've got your eyes taken to the back of the picture, as is the parked cars on the left hand side, the parked cars on the right hand side, leading your eye in that way as well. A couple of street lights there. Again, that could be quite useful to include. And talking about what to include, think about things to exclude. So maybe some of the plants dotted around the place. We might have an extra figure. The car on the right hand side that's just emerging from the right hand side, we might lose that one as well. And also we've got to think about simplifying the picture as well. There's lots of complexities here with architectural details, and when you look at the cars, all the different reflections in there and lines and colours, that would be very tricky to concentrate on, would be very time consuming and not suitable for painting in a loose style. So we've got to simplify that as well. And I think about where's the darkest area, where's the lightest area. Sometimes it's a good idea to have those bang up against each other. This is going to be a three colour painting. I'm only going to be using red, which is a rose opera, a yellow light, and a blue, Sinistrous blue. They're all from a company called Celelier, a French make. And also I've got a neutral tint in there for darks as well. The actual scene is Chipping Sodbury, near to my home location. So a scene I'm fairly familiar with, and sometimes that can be an advantage, having a familiar scene. Sometimes it can be a disadvantage. So we'll see how we get on. All right, let's make a start then. And the paper I'm using is Saunders Waterford, not the high white, just the ordinary natural colour, I think they call it, and it's 300 grams in weight. This size is quarter imperial, so it's 15 inches wide by 11 inches. I've got a slight angle to the board, maybe about 10 degrees or so, and taped down onto my I've got a Corex board here, which is a bit like corrugated cardboard but in plastic, quite a firm base to it, nice and lightweight, and secured down to that with some DIY masking tape. I'm often asked, do you have a stretch paper? Doesn't it buckle when you're painting? And yes, it does a little bit. And then obviously when it dries, it flattens out again, so doesn't bother me too much. Now the pencil I'm using is a 3B pencil, so fairly soft, gives nice dark lines. I'm sometimes asked, do you bother about the lines showing through the finished painting? And it doesn't really bother me too much. I think it probably works well in a loose style, having some of those pencil marks showing. So I've done the rooftops from left to right. I'm just thinking about shapes primarily when I'm putting in this initial drawing, and trying to remove from my mind what I think they look like, but constantly looking at my reference picture or photograph and just thinking about shapes. And that's quite true of a row of cars. Rather than perhaps thinking of them as individual cars, just think of them as one whole object is a good way of approaching it. So getting in those rooftops there, and they're going to be hopefully a nice feature of the painting, with some light hitting the tops of those the car roofs. So I just did the shadows there. Now getting a big vertical line here for the side of the building, try and make that parallel to using the masking tape as a bit of reference, and then that nice canopy, also that's going to have a little bit of light coming off it. Right, a figure, just loosely drawn, starting with the head, torso. Try and get the proportions right of the size of the head, the torso, and the length of the legs. Let's have a second figure. Sometimes just shade in, just cross hatch where the face will be, so I can decide at this stage whether they're coming towards us or away from us. Second figure, try and get the legs slightly different so it doesn't look like they're synchronized. Shadows. And then we've got this A board. I think there's a cafe here or something, and this A board outside, which is quite a nice feature to have in that left hand corner with its shadow. That too might have a little bit of light coming off it. We'll see how we can introduce that. Just firm up some of those lines. Maybe these are shoppers carrying a few shopping bags. And then thinking about a lamppost, some street lighting. That helps a little bit. The left one pointing into the right, and the right one pointing into the left. Now the cars on the right hand side a little bit smaller, less detail. And as I did with the left hand side, just start at the back and work my way forwards. Try and have them not too uniform. Again, thinking of the shapes, and when you look along a row of parked cars and the rooftops, it's almost like a city skyline with lots of different shapes. The bollard there, again a bit of a curve of the pavement. Shadow. So of course here I'm thinking also where's the sun coming from, the angle of the shadows. Now over on the right hand side there is just really not have too much detail. I know there's some planters over there on the roadside. There are some trees behind those background buildings. Yeah, so those figures definitely going to be coming towards us. Okay, so I think we're finished with the drawing. So now for the painting, we'll start off with the initial wash. And you can see there my palette on the right hand side, just 4 mixing wells, and generally in the top right hand side it's going to be predominantly the blues, and then the top left hand corner predominantly the yellow, bottom left red, and then reserving the bottom right hand corner for the darks with the neutral tint. Now the brush I'm using is a mop brush. This is it's a brush from a company called Raphael, French make, and it's their size 6. So I've started with just adding in a bit of a yellow tint to the horizon, and then in with the blue. It's a bit of a greeny blue, this one. Quite a cool blue. Then straight away thinking about the light hitting that canopy. And this mop brush has got a very good edge to it, great for carefully going around shapes. So you can see I'm probably spending more time, or just as much time mixing as I am actually painting. So this is just the base of the building. It's not going to be the actual end colour. So we'll come down to the tops of those cars, be very careful here, and again trying to utilize that nice sharp edge on the mop brush. It does hold a lot of paint, this brush, as well. Very good for going over large areas and not having to keep going back to your water well and loading up again. And with a slight angle on the board, the paint is ever so slightly coming down the picture, as you can see there, just travelling down a little bit. Now, a bit of careful painting around the figures, because we want to try and reserve some of the paper showing behind. Doesn't matter too much if you go over a little bit. That can be corrected with a bit of, you'll see at the end I use some white gouache invariably to add a bit more intensity to reflections and light hitting particularly figures. Now, the road. Don't want this to be too dark. So the sky is light, the road is light. And then the pavement, similar tone, light again. Now I'm not painting around these figures' legs, but certainly painting around their bodies, going up to the side of the cars. Make the pavement a little bit warmer as we come down. And if some little bits of the paper are left unpainted, that can be quite good as well in a scene like this, Contre Jour, because it could be just little bits of the road catching the light, adds a bit more sparkle to it. Let's finish off the road. And having a big mop brush is also, it's easier to paint around curves like you saw me do there, painting around the curve of the pavement. A lot easier with a big brush like that. Just mop that up a little bit. Just take out a little bit of that, those blobs as well. Painting up to the edge of those cars. So as this wash is still moist, we can be going back into it with other colours, and this will, they'll go a little bit lighter as it dries, but just adds a bit more interest into an otherwise flat and dull area of the painting. So I'm lifting out a little bit there. I've dried the brush. I'm just lifting out some of the paint. This could be done with a tissue. Now notice on the side of the road it's a little bit darker, so again, as this is still moist, we can go in here and it gives us a very faded, darker area. Don't be afraid to use your fingers as well. Drag the paint along or even lift it off with your fingertips. So I think that's nearly done with the initial wash. We need to let this dry now. So when everything is 100% dry, we can then go on to the next stage. And it really does have to be dry. I've speeded up this video a little bit with by using, also I've used a hairdryer just to speed things up. But fast forward to the completely dry stage and we can then go on with the next step. So same brush again. This time we're going to be doing the background buildings, all the buildings left, middle and right. Yep, so same brush, quite dark as you can see, which will give us a nice contrast there with the light on the canopy of this cafe or shop there. As I've said, this will dry a little bit lighter, so it might look a little too dark at the moment, but it should dry lighter. And with these buildings, it doesn't matter if you leave out little bits here and there, we can make those into something. Now those background buildings, do the rooftops first. I've emphasized a little bit of a curve in the along the ridge there of the rooftop, just to maybe make them look a little bit more vintage and older. A bit of a warmer tone now as I come down to the bottom, darker as well, with the neutral tint. Just going down to the tops of the cars. Got to be a little bit careful now to just come down to the tops. Then let's continue now onto the right hand side. So I'm trying to get a bit of a brownish colour here for these rooftops, utilising that flat edge as well. If you saw the edge of the mop brush, it's almost like a knife. It's very, very sharp. Great for getting flat edges. Now the building on the right hand side. We will go over this again for some of the darks where we've got some rooftops and windows and things like that. We'll go, when this is dry, we'll go back over that. Careful over the rooftops of the cars. Almost following the line of my first wash. Just going over that again. Dark towards the base and on the right hand side. Add a bit of blue into that dark neutral tint. Now over on the right hand side there were little bits of, well, there were some planters over there and various things going on. So I've just left just a few little highlights there to give an indication, an impression of something on the street side. Now dark, almost mirroring the right hand side, nice and dark on the left hand side. We'll get in this canopy. So we should see now what we wanted, that light hitting the canopy and just letting it bleed in places into the buildings. That doesn't matter. finish off the base of these buildings. And then like with the cars, very careful around these figures, following that first wash that I did. But don't worry if you go over, we can correct things within reason. Leave out a few little specks here and there. Now the A board. Should be fairly simple to do. With this brush, we want to try and leave that top of the board to show, just grabbing some of the light, legs, base of the board, getting some legs, and then the shadow. So the next step will be the cars, but I need to make sure everything's really dry now before I go on to the next stage. So out with the hairdryer, speed things up a little bit. That should be nearly done. You can see now things are looking a good bit lighter compared to when we put the paint on first, especially along the left hand side there. That's gone a good bit lighter. So let's now do the cars using the same brush as I've been using. could actually have done these cars while the wash of the buildings was still wet. Might have been quite a nice effect, letting that bleed into the rooftops here and there. But it's dry now. So pay a little bit more attention to this end car. We've got more of it. Back of the car. So we can see we've got the rooftop highlighted and the boot highlighted as well. Now for their shadows, let's mix something nice and dark. And then as I go along with the shadows, even though I've got a slight tilt on the board, the shadow is going to go against gravity, travel up into the car. So not too... So we've got more of a harmonious mixing of the cars with their shadows. And when I get the shadows in like this, I feel the painting starting to come together. And then the cars on the right hand side. Not too much detail. Careful to leave those tops, boots and bonnets. So shadows now. So shadows under those cars. On the right hand side, coming down towards us. Try and introduce a little bit of light underneath them as well there. Just the light shining through. So not too monotonous. Use the finger just to smudge things a bit while the paint is still damp or moist. Or use the paper towel. It can actually be quite rough with this paper, with watercolor paper. It does take a lot of rough treatment. Now these two figures, starting with, I'm using the same mop brush here, starting with their faces and leaving their heads highlighted. I'll do their arms as well with the same colour. Now for their clothing, let's have this slightly bluish. Leave out the shoulders with the sunlight shining on them again. A little bit darker towards the bottom. And then legs very loosely done with a few gaps, lost and found. Figure number 2. Let's have this a similar tone. Now this one's got a couple of shopping bags. And then legs. Very loosely done. And when you leave little gaps like that, it can give the impression of perhaps a bit of movement. And then cementing them to the picture, their shadows, connected with that A-board. Just touch up the faces a little bit. And if it's too dark, lift off with a paper towel while it's still moist or damp. So let's now add in a few more details to the buildings. I've got a fairly small synthetic brush now, dark paint, and this canopy, add a bit more form to it. Those the actual frame of the canopy, underneath the canopy. And then this curve of the pavement, add a bit of definition to these edges and the cobblestones around the edge, just a few, and then the shadow, quite intense towards us, and then it gets a little bit thinner as it hits the light, as it bends around. So the bumpers of the cars, a few more car details while I've got this brush, not too much, bit of smudging with the finger, just a few rooftops. Now these buildings on the left hand side, I'll add a few more darks to these, just here and there, indication of some rooftops, windows, lines, some lines there helping the perspective, leading your eye into and to the back of the painting, as would lines on the pavement. Add in a few horizontal lines here, just a few, give the indication of some slabs. So we've almost using now a dry brush with this synthetic brush. Very good for giving the impression of some tire marks on the road. Make it a bit random, not too precise. And then I need to now add in some detail on the buildings on the right hand side, some of the rooftops. First let's do these background buildings, those two buildings right at the end of the street. Their rooftops are deeper in colour than the walls, just a few windows, not all of them. Leave a few out. And a few little details to the chimney tops. And then we have some extensions coming out of the buildings on the right hand side, some roofs coming out, giving some angular, almost triangles of darkness. Just do 3 or 4 of these. And one on the right hand side, bigger one here. And on the corner there's a cafe or something, so I've just done the top of the ground floor, so to speak, the hoarding above the shop, just a few windows. Now these street lamps, street lights, get those in with a dry brush stroke. Leave out a few gaps here and there. Then the actual lights themselves. So we'll have this one pointing into the middle, and then the right hand side pointing into the middle. Let's get in a third one at the back there. While I've got this brush, just making a few more marks. And at this stage I'm not looking so much at my reference photo, I'm just thinking more from an artistic point of view, just making those marks, emphasizing some areas perhaps. This figure, shopping bag, maybe a strap there for the bag. And then where there's some light, add a few darks underneath those, like these rooftops here, the rooftops of the cars. A few little aerials. Now the trees. So I'm using the side of the brush here. Paper's got a fairly rough texture to it, even though this is the medium knot texture that Saunders do. This is not rough, but you still can get this effect. Side of the brush, not too wet, leaves a few gaps showing. Try not to make the tree too rounded and perfect looking. Maybe a few aerials here and there protruding out from the rooftops and the chimneys. Just continue on adding in a few more details. Could be another figure in there. So I just picked up that little speck of light at the top, and that was just made it into a figure. So now I'm going to add in a few yellow lines along the side of the road here. Some double yellow lines. Just helps emphasize that curve there. Leading the eye in. Number plate on the back. Then this bollard at the back here with its shadow. Quite dark. It's actually from a composition point of view, it's slap bang in the middle, which may not be ideal, but at least it's not dead center in the car. And then a shadow. And then some tail lights on some of the cars, a deep red. So we're nearing the final stages now. And what I like to do is add in a bit of highlighting. So we made that third figure. Let's add some shoulders to that figure. few more car tops as well while we've got that white. Maybe another figure over there on the right hand side. Head and shoulders with white. And then a bit of white on this bollard. Perhaps a bit of light highlighting that windscreen there. That's the side of the A-board. And then those lights. Maybe just a few bits, not too much on some of the windows as well. A lot of the windows in the street have white frames, and I find if you put in those white frames, the buildings don't look so nice in a painting. So try not to overdo it too much. So just stand back and check everything. The trick is knowing when to finish, of course, and not overdo things. So let's now look at the finished painting. So I've taken a little photo of it here and cropped it just a bit, covering the main elements here. So just to summarize, a scene, Contre Jour, against the light, street scene, English street scene. Thinking about the composition, well, before that, thinking about is it suitable for a painting? Is it suitable for watercolor? And sometimes it isn't. Thinking about what to leave in, what to leave out, simplifying things as well. A lot of the architectural details we left out. We haven't painted all the windows, kept it as simple as possible. And with that limited palette, thinking about tones, getting the mixtures right before committing yourself and putting it on the paper. And then with the initial wash, letting that dry 100% before continuing on. And you saw the use of the different brushes. We essentially used just two brushes, primarily the big mop brush, which had a very good point to it. It's a synthetic mop brush from Raphael. Not natural hair, synthetic. Got a very good point, very good edge to it as well, which I probably use for 3/4 of the painting. And then the smaller synthetic brush for details, the dry brush strokes as well, where I did the tire marks on the road, the street lights, and a few more architectural details, picking up some of those highlights that I left when I did the initial wash, picking up some of those, adding in maybe a few darks behind them just to indicate some sort of object there. And sometimes some of these highlights that you leave out, you can then make something out of them, like that third figure on the left hand side. Something was left there, put in, little highlight was left there, put in a bit of a dark face and a torso, and we've got a figure straight away. And then with the white gouache, emphasizing that, making a figure out of it. So hopefully you like that, you like the painting, and you picked up a few extra little tips there. You can see more of my pictures and information about the workshops I do. So do have a few workshops through the year, or I can do one-to-one instruction with you. Do it online as well. You don't need to be in the UK. I can do things online with you as well. If you got a webcam and suitable internet connection, we can do a one-to-one session together. Please contact me for details. But thanks for watching. Go to my website for more information, www.timwilmot.com, TimWilmot.com. But thanks for watching, and here's to the next time. Thanks very much.